Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Monet and you're watching Life is Monet. It has been about 5-6 months since my last book haul, and so I decided to film another one today to show you guys the books that I've required since that last haul video. I am incredibly proud of myself because this haul is not as massive as the hauls that were on my channel last year, and that was something that I wanted to do differently this year. I wanted to keep my unread TBR down, my physical TBR down, and not continue to just purchase books to sit on my shelves unread. Because these are books that I have acquired over the last 6 months, I have read quite a few of them, and so I'll be sharing a little bit about my thoughts on the ones that I did read. So first up, we have a book that I really think that I'm going to enjoy because it's had raving reviews so far, and it's going to combine two things that I really enjoy, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This is essentially a sci-fi romance story about two individuals, Sam and Sadie, and they are childhood best friends, I believe, and in college they create what I assume is a video game or some type of virtual reality that propelled them into success. They're very rich, they have a lot of power, but still the dynamics between the two of them cannot be fixed with their power, their fame, or their money. And I love the idea of just merging a romance story into a video game virtual reality story. I'm not exactly sure which one is going to be in this book. This book reminds me of some of the things I really enjoyed about Warcross, which is a YA by Marie Lu that I really loved. 5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you guys check it out. This is geared towards adults, and so something about that just makes me feel like I'm gonna love it that much more because I have already read something kind of similar in a YA story, and I'm looking forward to reading one that's geared towards my age group. The next book that I grabbed was a hardcover of Station 11. This is one that I've wanted to read for the past 2 years, but for some reason whenever I tried to purchase it, I could not find a hardback version of this book, and I really wanted a hardback version, so I just did not purchase it. I decided to wait. I guess I could have tried the book via audio, but for some reason I did not. I finally checked again, and the hardback version of this book was available again, and it was for a reasonable price, so I finally grabbed it before they like ran out again. This is a post-apocalyptic dystopian book where we're gonna follow a group of nomadic individuals as they deal with the aftermath of a great catastrophe to humanity. The next book I grabbed, I'm really in love with the cover, and I'm actually very excited to read it, and that is going to be The Art of Prophecy. This cover is like so beautiful, and I really love it. When I seen it, I had to grab it. When I found out more about the book, I was even more excited to read it. This is a book that centers around a prophecy. We have a child who was born to defeat this great immortal Khan, which is a god being in this world, and because that child is prophesied to win this great battle, he grows up in a life of just luxury and splendor and like ultimate respect because people are celebrating him for a battle that he has not even won yet. But this book has a little bit of a twist because the prophecy is actually wrong, and so we're gonna follow this young boy as he tries to live up to being a hero that he's expected to be, even though the prophecy was not correct, and he has not actually spent his life so far training to win the battle because he was always told that he was gonna win it anyway. This is the first book into a new series, and I probably will vlog me reading this because I am so excited to jump into this. I really hope that the world building is really good. I expect it to have a little bit of dense writing and dense world building, and something about the cover just lets me know that this is like high, dense, epic fantasy, and I'm prepared for that going in, and I know that. The next book that I grabbed recently was A Strange and Stubborn Endurance. This is another book that I'm very excited about. It is a recent release. We are following two characters. This is a male-male romance set in a fantasy world. One of the main characters that we follow is Vel, who's the prince of this kingdom. He is currently betrothed to marry the princess of a neighboring kingdom, but something happens and this secret of his is revealed, and everyone finds out that he actually has a preference for men, and in his country this is forbidden, and so his family is ready to disown him and kick him out of this royal society. However, the neighboring kingdom is not as thrown off by his preference for men at all, and so instead of offering the princess to him, they end up offering the princess's brother, and basically saying that they're still willing to go forth with this politically arranged marriage, but instead they will be marrying their son. And so we have a bit of a forced proximity male-male romance, and there's a lot of political machinations and schemings that are going on in the background, and these two individuals are going to have to learn to trust each other, and they're going to fall in love along with the process. I am very excited for this book because I feel like it's a plot that I have not seen in adult fantasy in a while, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out. The next book I have is one that I have already read, and that is Olga Dies Dreaming. This is a book set in New York City. We're following a girl and her brother as they navigate the gentrification that's going on in their home neighborhood. They have a lot of history and like reputation around their family, but Olga's brother is someone who holds political office, and he is keeping a deep secret. Little bit of a spoiler, he prefers male companions, but he does not feel like he can live in his truth because he is a politician, and that just does not go over well. And there's a lot of people who kind of know his secret, and they blackmail him throughout that process. I felt like his story was very interesting to follow. Olga is another very dynamic character, and I enjoyed watching them navigate just being their authentic self, dealing with some microaggressions and just prejudice towards them being Hispanic. Also the drama that comes around with trying to keep their neighborhood as authentic as possible and true to what it was like when they were growing up, but also knowing that gentrification is something that cannot be fought effectively all the time. And I felt like this book had a really good dynamic. I really enjoyed reading it. I actually read the audiobook first, and then I loved it so much that I ended up purchasing a full copy of it. One other thing that I wanted to highlight about this book that I cannot believe I just forgot to mention is that Olga and her brother Prieto are the children of a political rebel, and she's kind of deemed as like a terrorist by this society, and she leaves them and they're left to be raised by other extended family members, and she basically tries to get them back involved with her rebellion, and that's something else that they have to go back and forth about, whether or not they agree with their mother's view on America, and if they want to join in this rebellion or revolution that would basically deem them domestic terrorists. So if the first part or the first selling point did not get you to pick up this book, I hope that that was like the extra push that you needed to check this book out. The next book I grabbed is the sequel to one of my top reads last year, and that is going to be All of Our Demise. This is book 2 to All of Us Villains, which is a YA book that I really enjoyed last year. It is a book that's set in this world where magic has pretty much come to its weakest form. It's something that everyone can use, but in this town, these high-class families, there's about 6 or 7 families in this town, they have a secret. Well, they have been holding this contest to the death with their descendants of their families to be the ones to control high magic for an entire generation. And so this contest happens once every 20 or 25 years, and it is called the Blood Trials. And so we follow the 6 descendants of these families as they enter this year's blood trial, but someone from a particular family has written a tell-all book, so now the whole world is aware that these blood trials are happening, but the blood trials are set up in a way that it is a curse, and so it's really hard to break it, because even if the descendants decide not to participate in the blood trials, somebody in their family will still die. The government is very upset about this because they cannot alter the trials in any way, but they definitely want to get their hands on this high magic. And some of the descendants that we follow in this story, they start to present killer instincts that you would never expect before. Those that you thought would kill the game going into the blood trials definitely switch, and there's also a component where they're trying to figure out if they can break this curse without all of the families losing a loved one in the process. And so the book ended very explosive in book 1. I'm hoping to jump back into this with book 2. I did receive the ARC, which I'm not going to haul in this video, but I did receive the ARC. I was only able to read like 25 or 30% of it physically because my life was just so busy, but definitely still wanted to support these authors when the original like full cover came out, and so I had to grab me a copy. The next book is another YA that I read already, absolutely loved. You guys are gonna see it in my top of the year, and that is The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This book was such a banger. Like every time I think about just how I felt reading this book, good feels. I loved it so much. So we are following this character by the name of Yamilet, and Yamilet goes to a Catholic school pretty much as a protector for her brother, who is someone who gets in trouble a lot, and her mom holds her responsible for her brother's actions a lot. And so Yamilet is balancing what life is like, trying to find her own version of herself. She is someone who has queer feelings and sexual attractions to the same sex, and she is coming to identify herself as a queer individual, but it's something that she feels like she has to keep absolutely under wraps and a secret because of things that have happened before her transferring to this Catholic school, the disappointment that her mother will feel, who is extremely religious, and also the fact that she goes to a Catholic school. But living in the closet or undercover is a lot harder than you think it will be, especially when you're always responsible for the nefarious decisions that your brother makes. And I just so loved exploring the dynamics of just friendships and relationships, and as someone who is the older of 3 siblings, I understand wholeheartedly what it is like to constantly have to answer for the decisions of your younger siblings and just fighting to make a way for yourself to be independent. There's so much pressure that Yamilet feels because she doesn't have a scholarship to go to this Catholic school. She has to work and help her mom, but her mom is incredibly independent. She doesn't want to ask for help. Yamilet is really close to her father, but he is not in America. He was essentially deported, and so like there's just so much family dynamics that Yamilet has to navigate through in this book, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I loved it. I would stand on a soapbox and tell people to read it every day. The next book I grabbed is another recent release, and that is going to be Other Birds. We're following this main character whose mother has recently passed, and she had some deeply unresolved issues with her mother. She inherited her mother's apartment, and so when she goes there, she's able to meet the very mysterious neighbors that her mother spent the last few years of her life living with. There's also some haunted aspects to this apartment building. She interacts with what she deems is a couple of ghosts, and the more that she's here and the more that she gets to know their story, she realizes that they have a lot of unresolved issues in the same way that she does. There's also a bit of a book or like writing component to this story, and I think that it sounds very enticing. I love books that feature magical realism. I love books about resolving issues with family members, especially when they are like not physically there to resolve it. I love tying in emotional tethers and through like bloodlines kind of thing. I know that it sounds more than what this book probably will be, but I just love that as a setup for a book, and I'm very much looking forward to this one. The next book I grabbed I think is also a new release. I feel like a lot of these are going to be new releases, and a couple of them were pre-orders. When I seen this cover, I just had to purchase this book because it feels like the perfect winter read. The back says that this is book 1 of the Galatian trilogy. The code is not alive. Even the back of it just feels like the perfect book to sit by my fire and read when it's cold and snowing outside. The synopsis of this one says, in a small place known as the Ledge, a civilization is trapped by a vast chasm and sheer mountain face. Rations are small, living is tough, and there is no way to escape befalling a deathly drop. What's more, every season the people must present themselves as a human sacrifice to the Galatians, mysterious winged creatures who reside beyond the ledge. Dawson is an axe wielder and the only remaining member of her family, has so far avoided the annual culling, but her luck has run out. She is ripped from her icy home with no idea what will happen to her on the other side. Will she be enslaved, murdered, or worse? Fortunately, a half Galatian called Ryan offers to help them both escape, but how can she trust one of the very creatures that have plagued her life? Dawson is a survivor, and she is not afraid to cut anyone down to live. I like having a bit of a cutthroat character that's willing to turn on her only ally if it means her survival. The next 2 books are also new releases. They are 5-star predictions for me, and I am like over the moon excited to check them out. The first one is going to be The Witch and the Tsar. This is a Slavic, Eastern European folklore retelling of Baba Yaga and Ivan the Terrible. I read The Bear and the Nightingale last year, and that was my first really look into Baba Yaga as a character. I've done so much research since then, and I just really love her depiction in Slavic folklore because she is a character that can be rewritten in so many different ways, and they all feel authentic to her. Sometimes she can be incredibly nice and helpful, and other times she can be very spiteful and evil. Sometimes she's depicted as young and beautiful, and other times she's depicted as old and decrepit, and all of that still ties into her original telling. I enjoy following stories stories like that. And I love this kind of like emergence of following Baba Yaga in different types of books. And if you haven't read The Bear and the Nightingale, or you don't know a lot about Eastern European or Slavic or even Jewish folklore, I would highly recommend that you check out a few videos, even here on YouTube, because they are incredibly interesting, very enticing. And when I seen this book, it's been such a long time since I read something like The Bear and the Nightingale that I was like, something about this just feels like a 5-star prediction. I pre-ordered this earlier in the year and I was so excited when I was finally able to pick it up. The next book is Thistlefoot, and this is another book that's gonna follow Baba Yaga, but I think we're following something similar to her descendants. In this book, we're following a brother and a sister who are estranged from each other, and they both lived here in America. I believe they're here in America. And then they get called to accept their inheritance, and they find out that their inheritance is not like land or a house or money in the traditional sense, but they're going to inherit Thistlefoot. And they have like this house that's on chicken legs, and like this is also very authentic to the Baba Yaga story because she's often depicted as a witch who lives in the woods. She's essentially the witch of the deepest parts of the woods, and her house is usually guarded by a bone fence, a fence made of human bones, and her house often has chicken legs. During my research, I've actually found out that chickens in Slavic folklore are creatures that can travel between worlds, and so I think that there is a little bit of a component for her house having chicken legs because she is a mythological creature, and so she would have essentially the ability to travel between worlds. The next book I grabbed was a book of the month pick, and that is going to be Small Angels. This is another book that I'm intrigued when I read about it. This is a hypnotic tale of sisterhood, first love, and hauntings, a wedding in a small English village that stirs up unsettling magic and forces a troubled family's secrets to come out into the open. In this book, we're going to be following a particular family, one of which is a sister by the name of Kate, who had a bit of a romantic relationship with this character named Lucia, and they have always been drawn to these mysterious woods. One night, something very tragic happens, and Kate is never really able to escape what happened that night. Years later, her brother is getting married, and his wife has chosen a venue near an old church, which is right near these woods that Kate experienced this traumatic event. So now she has to return home. Things are not as they appear. A lot of paranormal activity is happening. It is freaking her brother and his wife out, and she has to reconnect with Lucia to figure out how they're going to protect their family members from this unsettling magic. Okay, the next book that I have was actually sent to me by Orbit, and that is Ruination. I believe that this book is already out by now. It has League of Legends on the top corner, which makes me feel like this is a video game that has now been written like a book. I definitely need to do a lot more research on this. It did come with these like character cards, and it had Ruination on the back. I'm pretty certain that this was a video game. Maybe it has no relation to this book. Honestly, I just received it. I don't know anything about it, but since I do have it, I want to check it out because the character cards look very dope. The next two books I have, the first one I purchased myself. It was a pre-order from last year, and that is going to be The Final Strife. I have already read this book and given a review of it in my wrap up for the month of, I don't even know what month it was, but I'll put it in the cards up above. But I got the US version of this book, and a friend of mine, Tiana, had 2 copies of the Waterstones editions, and she sent me one, and I am forever in love with it because this is definitely a much better cover than the original. I like having both of them. I still think I'm going to keep the first one because I do plan to continue with the series. I will be pre-ordering the next book before it comes out, and it's probably going to match this cover, so I definitely want to keep this. But if I'm able to snag the sequel in the Waterstones edition, that would be like my preference. But for now, I'm gonna be holding on to both copies of these books. The next books that I grabbed was a graphic novel. I grabbed volume 1, 2, and 3 of Paper Girls. This is another like set of books, or graphic novels, books, I'm gonna call them books, that I wanted to read for a long time, and I just was not able to get around to them. Now I'm in a point where I am reading more graphic novels, and so I felt like it was the perfect time to finally purchase them. I didn't buy it before because I felt like they would sit on my shelves, because at that time I had so many other graphic novels that were just sitting on my shelves that I was not reading. So I just kind of like forbade myself because I knew that if I would have purchased them, I would not have read them prior. With that being said, I also grabbed the bind up of Saga. This entire bind up was $60, and it was much more of a bang for my buck because each individual volume is like $13 each, and I was like, I would just take all of the volumes in one kind of like compendium instead of purchasing all the different volumes separately. And that concludes my book haul. Those are all of the books that I have acquired over the past 6 months. I definitely feel like it was a much smaller amount compared to before, like I mentioned earlier. You can let me know down in the comment section how you feel like I've been doing this year. The year is almost over and I have only done 2 book hauls, and they were of a much smaller size, and so I am very, very proud of myself. I will see you guys in my next video.